What's going on, everybody? Adam Patterson here, bringing to you Patterson Logistics Volume 2, A Week in Review. This week is ending July 24th of 2026. So we are pretty close to going on 2 years in active running business now. And if you didn't watch last week's recap, I'll give you a small recap of it. Basically, to finish the week, we had $800,000 in receivables extended, which we are needing to be paid on. So this week, that was my primary focus, was making sure I got every accounts payable team their invoices to make sure that they were getting paid so that our AR looks good. And we capitalized on a lot of that. We actually received quite a few payments, or at least got a payment schedule going with everybody. Some of these were aging. Some of it was my fault because I didn't build things out properly. So it's kind of like tit for tat. You got to figure it out as the time comes along. And although it's annoying, although it's BS, you got to make sure you get paid. And in order for you to be paid, sometimes you have to do things by your customers' way that they need to see things. So for this, sign BOL, sign POD, the actual invoice itself, and then whatever other information they may need. They may need their BOL number on there. They may need a PO number on there. They may need a special shipment number on there. They may need email correspondence of the tender, and then any approvals for any accessorials. So it was a pain in the neck, but we're getting it all sorted out, which was a good thing to this week. But because of that, like I said, my operations this week were very light. And by very light, I only ran with a handful of customers. I'm looking over at my screen to show the freight that I still have in motion because I'm still watching tracking, still providing updates, and I still have to do the actual job. But the main focus of my week turned from operating to sales, which is and was sales is what I like to do. That is the part of the job that I really enjoy. That is why I got into this field in the first place. I actually thought it was a sales only job. And prior to going into this business, when I accepted a role being a freight broker for a company, I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I was moving my way up the chain of command there, or the corporate ladder, as one might call it. And I was going to become a branch manager. And in the branch manager role, you don't do too much selling in terms of creating a sale and creating value. It's more you just manage the branches. You make sure that your cash flow looks good. You make sure all these things look good on your whatever this data is that they provide you at the end of the month, or that you have to provide at the end of the month. And you don't do any of the marketing. You don't do any of the sales. And that's really what I enjoy doing in life. So I used this week that was lighter on freight as a week for me to experiment and see what would Patterson Logistics look like if I hired out for all of my operations. If I hired more operators to take all of the freight off of my plate, if I hired more operators and account managers and account executives to handle my customers for me when issues come up, or if they need quotes or this and that, and I just basically manage relationships with my customers and have relationships with my customers, opposed to being the person who individually books and moves all of their freight. There's some fears with this, of course, that I'll get into a little bit later on, but I just wanted to see what the experiment would look like because, like I mentioned or have mentioned, my favorite thing is sales. That is the part that drives me in this business. That is the part that has always driven me. When I got my first job out of college, it was a sales role. I knew it in college that I wanted to go into sales and into marketing. That was my interest, where everybody else wanted to go into operations management, have a steady paying job in a warehouse with a high salary, or managing something or a team. I wanted to go into sales. I wanted to be an individual contributor, and I wanted to work my way up that route. And there's some reasoning for that, but of course this is a weekly recap, so I'll get into that at a later time. Actually, I'll get into it right now. Sales is the person who creates all the money. I knew eventually that I would want to start my own business. I had been trying for years, and in order to have a business, the first thing you have to do is have to have revenue. In order to have revenue, something has to be sold, and then you have to be able to deliver upon that. So I figured I would get over the first hurdle, learn how to sell something, and then I would figure out what I wanted to sell after I learned how to sell in the first place. So that's why I wanted to get into sales. That's why I wanted to get into marketing. And it's worked out pretty well for me. So I used this week to sell. I added more and more leads into my CRM system. I made more and more cold calls. I sent off more and more follow-up emails, and we drummed up quite a bit of opportunity. So it was a very fun week. I started off the week, and I had thought of this last week, where I was going to move away from trying to sell into enterprise accounts. Enterprise accounts are anywhere. It depends on how you want to classify it. Most people classify it anywhere from 300 employees and up. So a lot of people qualify it as anyone 500 million and up in terms of revenue per year. So it really depends on how you want to look at it. You can call it either one. Enterprise level account is basically an account that it takes probably a team to manage by themselves. And my pipeline is full of them. These are all life-changing accounts. Anytime you land an enterprise account, it's the biggest thing that's ever happened to you, the biggest thing that's ever happened to your business. And not only do I already have a couple on board as customers, but I have a pipeline full of about 20 or 30 enterprise accounts that could be coming on anywhere between October this year and 2 years down the road from now. So pipeline management was very big for me this week. Pipeline management being following up with prospects that you've already spoken to prior and just building more relationships, building more rapport, making sure that you're on their radar. And then when their process comes to a time frame, because they typically operate on RFIs, RFPs, and strict timelines that they have to adhere to per their corporate guidelines, they can perchance slip somebody in, but most times they don't because they don't want to ruffle any feathers. They don't want to screw up their current supply chain. They don't want to hurt any feelings of their current partners. And with that, my pipeline is full of these accounts. Like I said, it's 20 to 30 of them. Every single one would be the biggest thing that's ever happened to the business, in addition to the ones who have already been brought on. So I managed my pipeline. I followed up with everyone. I just made sure to stay on their radar. I built a little bit of rapport, a little bit of relationship with them, told them a little bit more about me, asked them more about themselves, and just made it fun, light, playful, and then just making sure that I know their correct timeline for when I should be back and receiving an RFP or an RFI from them. From there, I transitioned to adding more and more leads every single day into my CRM that were SMB and mid-sized businesses. Now, why did I do this? Enterprise accounts, they're fantastic. They're going to be great legs for standing, but they are not the foundation of a business. I would consider a foundation of a business to be somebody that you would have a better relationship with opposed to working through an RFP. Perchance it was pretty easy to get on this RFP and they will accept nearly anybody as long as your company's in good standing and you could earn the opportunity to then displace their incumbents. I would be a non-incumbent for these new customers and I would be looking to displace their incumbents and earn the business that somebody else currently has. So if it's possible for me to get in, I assume that it is possible for everybody. Even if it's a little bit difficult, even if it does take a little bit of skill and a lot of luck, it's still possible for everybody. So you do not want to build your company on the back of enterprise-sized accounts, in my opinion. Of course, they're great. That's how you scale. You need to land bigger and bigger business. You need to earn more and more business. Enterprise accounts, even if you start small, you can then grow into all of the business that they have to offer you, which is fantastic, of course, but I would not consider it the strongest legs to stand on. I would consider SMB and mid-sized businesses as the best customers to build it as your foundation and have your enterprise accounts really be your growth methods. And with that, I have a full pipeline. My current clientele, I have a few enterprise accounts already on board, and then I have small business to mid-sized business customers. And the SMBs to mid-sized business customers are the ones that I really consider my foundation. I have a better relationship with all of them. We're closer. I manage more of their portfolio. They rely on me a little bit more. They rely on my expertise opposed to hiring out a team and then just utilizing brokers as somebody who finds the truck for them. I am more of a supply chain consultant when it comes to my SMB and mid-sized business customers than I am just being someone who brings in a truck, right? So that is the foundation of my business, and I wanted more of those foundational customers. So with that, I added in more SMB and mid-sized business prospects to my CRM, And those are who I cold called and cold emailed on all week. And I brought a heck of a lot of opportunity in a week for what I was doing. When I'm making, I wasn't trying to do all too much because I already have a pretty good book and I don't want to expand beyond what I can actually handle, especially if they're in a new marketplace, which I try to stay within regions that I have capacity that I know of currently. But you always have to expand yourself so that you can learn new markets, learn new regions, and get more opportunity. So with that, I was calling on about 20 to 25 new cold leads per day while maintaining my current pipeline, which already had SMBs and midsize, but also those enterprise accounts. So throughout the course of this 5-day week, I probably did somewhere around 700 to 800 sales touches. And with that, I mean emails and cold calls or just follow-up calls. And it was fantastic. It was fantastic. I don't want to get into too many numbers. I just want to give you the recap and what my thought process was, because the numbers will speak for themselves when I do a recap at the end of the year for everything that we have accomplished. Just know it was very good. So yes, this week it was sales focused. It was customer retention focused. I, of course, spoke with my customers every single day. And then it's growth focused. There's a saying, if you're going into battle, if you're not advancing, you are actually retreating. In business, that saying is, if you're not growing, you're dying. Because if you're not growing, your current business, your current customers, that even if you're servicing them very well, they're still being solicited by people like me or by your competition, and they could win them over eventually if you screw up. So you need great customer retention in terms of great delivery. You need growth focus, so you need to be earning more business from your current customers or all of the business from your current customers. And then you need to be focusing on new customer acquisition. That is growth. That is growth. And then the outlook for what I am going to be doing for the next few weeks, I want to find a way to continue having this week every week. When I do not have operations bogging me down, I can create opportunity in sales for new customer acquisition, and I can just have better conversations to build better relationships with current customers. So I need to get myself to a place where this week becomes every week, but we're not light on freight. So I need two things. Number one, I need someone watching our accounting, our billables like a hawk. So that is going to be a focus of mine. I am going to find somebody who is going to be very much watching over our accounts receivable and making sure that we are getting paid on time and making sure everything that gets billed out properly. That's step number one. Step number two, I am hiring an operator. I have decided that if I can get an account manager, an account executive, operator, if you want to call them such, into a place where I am typically not involved in the day-to-day quoting. I'm still on of course, the email chains. I'm still a point of contact for my customers. I'm still building relationships with them. But I am not the one day-to-day managing the freight that is moving from A to B that we have on the board from customers. Then my time is better utilized where I can go and make the most return on my time investment, which is creating new opportunity, bringing on and onboarding new customers, and building more relationships in the space. That is what I like to do. It is what I'm good at. I'm, of course, a great operator. I would not still be in business if I could not operate and deliver upon what I say that I can do. But it is not where I find that my time is best utilized. I would much rather get a return on my time opposed to just paying myself for the time in terms of running the freight. I would want to get a future return instead. So I would want to add more leads to the CRM, continue to make new cold calls, continue to send new cold emails, continue to make new cold starts, continue building relationships and rapport and branding, and bringing on new business, or finding and creating systems and processes for bringing on new business outside of myself, but with my help. So that's my next steps. My next steps are two hires. Number one, accounts receivable. Number two, operations. And that is the outlook from this week and what we did this week going into next week and the growth that we are experiencing here at Patterson Logistics. Take care.